says the picture's not real clear. What is on that thing? So, what can we see? I'll take some hand raise. Did I get back to you, Cheddar? You had your hand up at one point. I said I'll get to you.
No, we're
We're gonna do prayer.
Yeah.
I skipped prayer. We're gonna do it after the lecture. Prayer. That's what we're gonna do. Just because I'm rolling now. I'll give a good break. It's a short lecture. All right. What do you see on there? It's a power pack. We got that part figured out. A driven gear. Yeah, so that's the tricky part is on this one, you're like, is this an engine-mounted power pack? Usually when we think of power packs, we're going to think it's going to be electrically powered, but not always, not always. So this one would mount right on an engine, but what do you think the driven gear does? What does that go to? I think it goes to an electric something? A pump, that's right. So we like to say our pumps have, sorry, I said that backwards. Our power packs have pumps in them. So generally the description of power pack includes the power part, hydraulic power, is there's going to be a pump in there. That's why I don't like spending so much time on the Apache power pack here at SMAT, because is there a pump in that power pack? I mean, kind of. There's a hand pump, but the hydraulic pump is actually on the engine on that one. So calling that one a power pack is, oh man, we're almost breaking our rules on it. So I don't like that piece. Normally, when the FAA or your Booker test says power pack, they're going to assume there's a pump inside of there that actually, and I don't want to use the word your main pump, because a lot of times when we have a power pack, it's out remote in the system somewhere, and it's easier to just put a power pack near a component that needs to do something than it is to run hydraulic lines from a different pump all the way out there. So that's kind of the verbiage and terminology when the FAA says power pack and asks questions that they're kind of thinking is it's almost think like a little self-contained hydraulic system. So that's what we're going with. Now, once we get out into the real world, we end up with Apaches where the pump's not included. Or we end up with power packs on the 206 where it's not so much self-contained, it's just easier to install it than engine-driven. So, yeah, some of the words, they'll get a little fuzzy. But yeah, Shane.
Just wondering, what's that aluminum foil-looking stuff on the backside?
Yeah, I believe that's covering the reservoir. So I don't know if there's something hot back by the reservoir on this one. But so far, if we're going to list what we saw, and you guys are doing great, usually we got a pump, we've got a reservoir, so pump, reservoir. Anything else you guys are seeing on here? Transducers, yep, I'm going to put that over here. Transducers.
Filter.
Filter is going to come over here. So I'm going to put the yes, pretty much assume it's on there, and then yes, you're right, it's on that one. You'll see it on a lot of bigger ones. So transducers convert a pressure to electrical signal, so the guy in the cockpit knows what's going on.
Pressure sensor?
That's pretty much the same as a transducer, but pressure sensor. So if we had a filter, for instance, that got plugged and the pressure got too high going through the filter, we're probably going to have a pressure sensor that says, oh, we got too high, so a little tattletale. So pump, reservoir, filter. All right, sometimes there's one other thing on there that the FAA likes, and they will say valves. So hard to see in here, and even when you say valves, it's one of those things where you're like, what? So a lot of times they'll say selector valves. It's a little bit of a stretch, but when you say selector valves, sometimes that can be just the motor reverses direction. So we have a check valve that will keep the fluid from flowing the wrong way when the motor reverses. And it's a stretch to say a check valve is a selector valve, but kind of like on the Aero mock-up, and you'd say, hey, is there a valve inside there? And you're like, whoa, pack valves. Some of them will have a shuttle valve, and we didn't talk about shuttle valves today. I believe the different types of valves we're going to cover detail, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow. But a lot of times they'll have a shuttle valve that can shuttle one way or the other in these. So valves, they like to say. So pump, reservoir, filter, valves is usually what you got covered. And oh, you got yourself a power pack. What are we missing on here that if we wanted to say, are we missing anything on here? Maybe would be a question. What does every hydraulic system have? Remember the FAA likes that question. You kind of go back to, are we missing anything? So relief valve may be on there. We're actually not going to put it necessarily in here because I'll put it over here. I don't know if I see one. Relief valve. Do I need a relief valve to be a power pack? Not necessarily, so it might be on there. Are we missing anything else?
Fluid lines.
Fluid lines? Ooh, nobody lists fluid lines on any of these. I'm gonna have to ponder that one. I don't know where to put that, but but where do the fluid lines go to, James? What are we missing for a hydraulic system? Actuator, yeah. So typically the actuator is not in the power pack. So that question was, if that FAA normally says, what does every hydraulic system have? And they're typically going to say, you have a pump, a reservoir, selector valve, and an actuator, right? So the actuators are not typically in the power pack. So if you get a multiple choice question that says something to the effect of, what does a hydraulic system have? Well, you're going to go with almost the same, pump, reservoir, valves, and an actuator. But if they say, what does a power pack have? These are the ones that they're typically looking for. Making sense? If you're just reading words on prepware, that'll get you some things. So make sure you look at it close. All right, some advantages to power packs is they like that one, no need for long runs of hydraulic lines. So back to kind of think, hey, I'm way out in the wingtip with an aileron or way in the back of an aircraft and I gotta open a door or something. Instead of running hydraulic lines all the way from my jet engine all the way back there, they'd be like, well, we can just run small electrical wires and have a little electric pump and have it go. So that's the logic they're using when they say, hey, I don't need to run long lines, is we'll just put a little motor out there with a power pack, and that'll save us some weight. In my mind, I'm like, really? But, okay, they like saying that. Less chance of leakage from hydraulic hoses all through the aircraft. Okay, I feel like your power pack's gonna leak first, but I don't know, the FAA likes that one. And then simple for small systems. That one I do tend to agree with. So when you see the 206, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's pretty simple for powering this. At least the control and how you could install it. It can be an STC where you're like, and now you have hydraulics in your airplane. They can be quite simple. Ooh, speaking of Samaritan, isn't that a beautiful plane? Yeah. So power pack pretty much handles just our gear in our 206. So we're gonna go tour it over there, but I got you some pictures so you know kind of what you're looking at. Here's looking through the back of the airplane into the tail section. Not quite the empennage, right? Because the empennage is technically just the tail feathers. Sorry about that one with communications class, the ELT. So still the fuselage, but towards the empennage. And when you look back there, you got a bunch of GPS and stuff. If I zoom in a little bit, you've got some relays and nicely labeled. If I want to move my gear down, we'll power the left relay, up powers the right relay. But the pump sits on top. The reservoir is actually down here, and it's a little difficult to see on this. I'm gonna try Nick's trick and see if it works. Just for the fun of it. Yeah, that's a little better. So you've got your reservoir with fluid and then a sight glass hanging outside the reservoir, and you can see the fluid lines almost to the top, about ½ inch, 3/4 inch, which is where we want it. And there's a filter in here, just like a normal one. You've got to take the bottom can off to get to the filter, which means you're going to make a little bit of a mess. Yeah, it's a little messy. So what do you think these are? Who was listening earlier last week? Accumulators, yeah. Weird looking accumulators, huh? So basically there's a little air that gets trapped in those. The only reason they're spiraled up is, well, I mean, it looks silly if you had 2-footed hose just doing that. So they put them in a little bit of a spiral, basically, so when the gear gets either all the way up or down, instead of just slam because the gear gets there, there's the tiniest little bit of cushion because you compress a little bit of air in there. So those are not accumulators where you're going to say, hey, we're storing a ton of energy so that when I select gear up or down, I can use them. No, they are accumulators more like a capacitor is a filter, right? So you're like, how's a capacitor a filter? And you're like, well, it smooths out the pressure. So they're that type of a accumulator. A what?
Those coils?
Yeah, those coils.
Okay.
Yep. So you got a little bit of air in. Actually, talking with Aeroset, there's a little shuttle valve in here. Is it a shuttle valve? Yeah, little shuttle valves that go back and forth, if I'm not mistaken. And if it gets jammed in there, you got a problem where the gear won't come up. And basically, you got high pressure sitting on the gear holding it up. And when you take the electric switch and select gear down, if that valve's getting a little bit worn out, it won't easily move over because it's sitting there with 2,000 psi pushing one way. And one of the first things they have you check is they say, well, make sure that your accumulators have enough air in there. Because if they don't, when you're running the pump, and similar to the arrow, right, you can imagine, and then the switch says, I got enough, but the motor has just that little bit of momentum and it takes a split second for the pump to stop running. So the pressure essentially is going up, 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 up. Yeah, it shuts off, but it spikes really high. There are reliefs, but the high pressure holds it over, so it is an issue. So a little bit of accumulator is nice. Cheddar.
What sort of diaphragm do we have?
No diaphragm.
There's nothing.
Nothing separating the air from the fluid. The air is lighter than the fluid, so it rises to the top. This is actually the highest point in this hydraulic system. So if any air gets in there, theoretically, it goes kind of to the accumulator. And you notice they sit pretty much right on top of the fittings there. If you had way too much air in them, we'd have a problem because now we'd be, every time we go to work the gear, we're going to have a compressible fluid, and well, that wouldn't be good either. So you don't want too much air in there, but just enough. All right, I saw another hand.
Yeah, what's keeping the fluid from pushing back up to the accumulator?
There's caps on the top. Is that what you mean?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're just lines with caps on the
Oh,
top.
I'm thinking those, the wires are.
Yeah, no, they're just lines, they're caps. So check that out when you get there. And yeah, pressure switch hanging off the side for our up-down operations. This system does not have any micro switches. When we say micro switches for sensing where the gear is. Wow, why did it go black? I'm gonna try to get a good one. There. It has proximity switches. So in Ryan's class, when you do landing gear, you guys will look a bit closer at the beach and some other landing gear systems, 210 I think. I believe those all run off actual micro switches. So when the gear comes up, it physically closes a switch. We're in the water, so it wouldn't be real good to have electrical wires anywhere near a physical switch because we're going to splash it, we're going to get it wet. So what we do on R206 is there's a proximity sensor, and I brought my drill and screwdriver. We'll assign somebody when we get there to take 2 covers off. Basically, I don't know if eddy current's the right word, because it's not a straight up, it's not a magnet, because it's sensing aluminum, but when the aluminum piece of the gear, the suspension if you will, gets close enough to the sensor goes, oh, there's some metal there, and sends a signal to the cockpit to say, hey, your gear is up, or when it goes down, it's similar. So on the control in the cockpit, we've got 4 lights for when the gear is up. It just says, hey, you're up. Or if the gear is down, there's 4 other proximity sensors to say, hey, you're down. Now, in this particular system, it does not turn the pump on or off. It's not like the arrow where when the gear is down, it hits the switch and says, better turn the pump off. Nope, this one is purely for the pilot to have an indication of, hey, am I up or am I down? And even with that, what's interesting is the POH says to the pilot, don't trust the light before you land, look out the mirrors and make sure your gear is either up or down, because let's say one of the actuators like busted and it's not holding onto the wheel anymore, but if the mechanism that the actuator either was touching or whatnot, part of the actuator goes up, I guess the actuator would be a good solution. If the suspension busted, but the actuator still pulls the freight. So anyway, all that to say, giving you a little bit of a tour of a different style landing gear system to say they're not all the same, created equal. And once again, we have a electric gear switch. So it is a selector, but it's not hydraulic. So if you were explaining this, if we had a homework assignment, you wouldn't say the gear is controlled by a selector valve. No, not a selector valve. It's electric. So yeah. All right. When the gear is all the way retracted, the pressure switch says, hey, it's out, go ahead and shut it off. So we got this nice picture, Mark, and I think it's Preston Carew. He's going to be the prime minister one of these days. He's got my vote. We'll see what happens. Preston, and they're hanging out in a village. Where's the gear right now? Is it up or down?
Probably up.
Up. These guys are sitting in the water. It's getting all wet. Mark's got the airplane turned off, hopefully, as he holds onto the prop. But what's holding the gear up? Hydraulic pressure. Yeah, so if you sit in the water for a long time, if you had, let's say, a leak in an actuator, in an O-ring, right? And we're not talking leak to get outside the system, but say we have a bad O-ring on one of the actuators on the main gear, the gear is going to slowly fall down. So if you had a leak, you'd want to make sure that before you take off, check where the gear is. Similar situation if you were flying, right? Your gear could droop. So if you're a pilot or a mechanic working on it and you hear the pump going every once in a while to bump the gear back, well, you probably got an internal leak somewhere on a system like this. Same for if you're sitting on the ground. They are kind of an over-center for the main gear. The front gear is kind of over-centered, but not really. You'll see when we go over there. But if you were to lose hydraulic pressure, when you first turn it on, you'll hear the pump go to refill it. So when I turn the master on when we're over there, everybody listen real close, and it's been a day or two, we will likely hear the pump just for a split second because, well, after 60 hours, 48 hours, however you want to phrase that, we probably had just a tiny little bit of fluid either slip by our O-rings or slip by the valve. Not that it should, but it happens.
So the FAA says hydraulic systems were 100%.
How did efficient get I'm confused. What did I say?
No, it's just, it was leaky, so it's not efficient.
Oh. Yeah.
Joking.
Right over. I was like, how does a leak make it non-efficient? Yes. Slight leak. The accumulator's not real big. totally not part of your required labs, but if you go to the website, you just type in Aeroset, go up to support, and under support, you can go to manuals, Cessna 206, 3400, and you can come down to service manual for continued airworthiness. So if you get done with your heavier labs at the end, it's an interesting one to look and say, okay, let's say I was responsible for the annual on here, or the 50-hour, what are they asking for? So it's a suggested place that you can go look at the manual and look for something where we're not giving you a grade for. Some of y'all are like, I hate manuals, I don't want to go any more than I have to. I get it. But it's an interesting one because you end up online, just click, click, click through their own manual. So it's a little bit of a unique setup, which is different than almost every other manual you guys get around here. So a lot of aircraft, especially as you get STCs and stuff like that, are going to be similar as you guys get out into the workplace. So not a bad idea to kind of poke through and make your way to the manual. And you might even say, hey, if I wanted to do a bearing or something, could I find that on the parts list? Just a little suggestion if you get ahead. I was going to display it, but I didn't bring it in here. So what would be missing, just review from my first little part, pump. Yeah, I mean, it's got the hand pump, but we don't really consider it a pump. My notes do say relief valves. Who was that? Is that geese or cheddar? Somebody said relief valves. My notes do say relief valves because a lot of times we have the thermal reliefs inside the power pack and the system relief. But careful if you're going to say no. The FAA says we absolutely have to have them. All right, so we are going to head to the LC after we do prayer requests and pray and get out of here. So questions on that very short lecture today. And I did see Ryan show up, so when we get back from the LLC, they'll be able to get group number 2 on. But questions on